Okay, welcome back, and this is the last afternoon of the course. Before I announce the first speaker, I want to especially thank all the speakers. Not everybody is here, but I definitely want to thank all of them, and especially people from industry, like Peter, who do the effort to come here, prepare the lecture. Very often they don't get credit for this in their company, but they still do this, and I think it's a great service to the community. And I would like to thank them because this course could not be done without the close collaboration between both academia and industry.
Hello, everyone. Today is the second talk about privacy. And instead of going into all possible directions of privacy, I decided to pick one direction and explain that and talk about that. And that is anonymity, or more precisely, anonymous communication. Why anonymous communication is important? Because it is one of the in many of the presentations that you have seen, why it is important to protect the data, why it is important to protect confidentiality, how cryptography helps there. But anonymity is not just about protecting the data, it's also about protecting the metadata. And this is one of the major applications of protecting the metadata. So in this talk, I'll try to explain what communication anonymity means, what do we mean by anonymity, and then what are the goals of such anonymous communication systems. And then I'll talk about three different techniques to achieve anonymity, namely Tor, Mixnet, and DCNets. So what is anonymity? Anonymity is the state of being not identifiable within a set of subjects or individual. For example, you are a whistleblower in a company. You want to publish some company documents, and then you don't want the company or any other people, or even the journalist whom you are sending the documents to know that who you are, because then that might have other problems. Sometimes you are a social activist, sometimes you are a human rights activist, and you want to publicly publish your opinion, and then you don't want the government or anyone else to know that who you are, so that they cannot, it doesn't blow back on you. For example, we all know that the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, is still in prison. And even Edward Snowden, he cannot go back to his home country. He has to hide in other countries. And the reason being that because people know who they are, and then they are basically facing the challenges. Even the family members of Julian Assange are regularly facing different kind of threats. And in such scenarios, anonymity could be useful. Even if you are not something like a whistleblower or social rights activist or human rights activist, suppose you are just a person browsing the internet. You don't want Google or Facebook to profile you. You don't want your ISP to profile you, and then based on that send you targeted ads. Sometimes you might like targeted ads, but some people might not like that. Some people might not like that some online service knows about their food habit better than themselves. And that's why anonymity is important. And it's especially important in the digital world, because in digital world, everything is persistent. Everything that once goes online, they cannot be deleted ever again. So anonymity is subset of privacy, but anonymity is not, privacy is not just anonymity. Privacy is many more things, but anonymity is one of the tools to achieve privacy. And more precisely, anonymity is one of the tools to achieve metadata privacy. But metadata privacy could be many other things other than anonymity. For example, every morning at 8 a.m., you open your laptop. That could be the metadata. That does not have anything to do with anonymity, but still that information might be used against you. So anonymity is a subset of metadata privacy, I would say. So what does it mean to achieve anonymity, or how easy it is to anonymity? Let's take an example. For example, let's assume there are 7.9 billion people in the world. And suppose you are on the KU Leuven campus and you are accessing the internet and you want to be anonymous. And out of those 7.9 billion, only 60% would use the internet, or significantly use the internet. And suppose you are browsing the web from KU Leuven campus and you are using the browser in English or Dutch or Icelandic, then you have different distribution, like 20% would speak English, 0.3% would speak Dutch, and 0.005% would speak Icelandic. And then you are accessing from KU Leuven campus. So suppose you are a KU Leuven student, then what is the... So there are so many ways to narrow down, just based on the information that you are accessing the internet from KU Leuven campus, probably using a browser where the default language is Dutch or Icelandic, and just based on that information, it's so easy to narrow down. There is a famous, I would not say famous, there was an exam case in a university campus. So in the morning, the day the exam start, the university receives a bomb threat on the campus via email. And then they tried to figure out who sent the email. The email was sent from some random email address. And then they tried to track the IP address of the person who sent the email. And then they realized the person who sent the email used Tor, so they could not track the IP address. Tor is one of the tools to achieve anonymity on the network. So that's great. That means probably that person's identity is hidden. But then they checked on the campus who among the students have used Tor just before the email was sent. And there was only one person. And that was enough. Then they can physically check their machine, show your machine, and they can figure out if that student has sent the email or not. And basically, the student was panicked before the exam, and they didn't want to go through the exam. And they thought that if they send a bomb threat, then probably they will cancel the exams, and then they can prepare better. And that basically, this is not a great example, but you see how difficult it is to achieve anonymity. And that's why you need many people to achieve anonymity. You cannot be anonymous on your own. You need to have a collection of people or a large number of people who are probably, for this example, there has to be a large number of people who are using Tor on the campus at that point for that person, that student to be anonymous. And you need that means anonymity you cannot achieve anonymity on your own. You have to, anonymity comes with number. So typically when we talk about anonymity, we can talk about it based on different layers. So for example, if you are thinking about anonymity, the most basic layers is the communication layer and application layer. Suppose you are accessing Facebook through using some kind of anonymous communication system, for example, Tor. So, but you have to log into Facebook. Then Facebook can identify who you are as a person. But probably Facebook cannot still detect your IP address, but probably Facebook has a history of your locations where you accessed your Facebook account from, and based on that can guess that probably you are still using the same machine and same IP address. So when you, so anonymity can be leaked on different layers. For example, of course, the network layer or the IP layer, the application layer. Other than that, also they can fingerprint your device. Many banks, when you log into the bank website, they check if you are logging in using a system that you have used before. If you haven't, then they would ask additional questions. That's for security, but that means they can detect if you are the same person or not. If they see, they find that you are trying to access the bank website from a different system, they want to make sure that it's you. So there are device fingerprinting for writing style. Some people always write the text in a certain way. For example, if you look at famous authors, you can just read one page of their writing. Even if you don't know who the author is, you can guess that probably this is the writing style. So there are multiple layers where anonymity can be broken, where the layer can leak information. But for today, we are going to focus on the network or IP layer. And mostly we'll talk about communication anonymity. So conceptually, what communication anonymity or for network layer means. So there are a bunch of IP addresses. There are a bunch of people who are using the internet. And there are a bunch of services or bunch of, for example, Facebook, Google, or other services. And then if someone who is observing your monitor your traffic, for example, your ISP, your government, or a third party, if they can track who you are talking to. Are you do you access KBC website, the bank KBC bank website, or do you access BNP Paribas Fortis, or do you have an account on bank? Or suppose they want to track what kind of social networks do you use. Do you always mostly use Instagram? Do you mostly use Facebook, or do you are you most of the time on TikTok? So probably they are trying to track all those things, and then basically in these cases, how do you obfuscate that information? That this IP address is talking to this IP address. How do you obfuscate that information? And then the adversary could be, for example, Facebook, which service you are accessing, or the website, or Google, or the adversary could be your ISP. The adversary could be your the country itself, which will ask information from the all the ISPs. And then you can divide things like passive attack, active attacks. Active attacks would be, so probably the adversary could inject their own traffic or try to modify traffic. Passive attack is just observing. And then you can divide partial or global adversary. Partial adversary would be probably just your ISP, where they cannot observe the whole internet or whole network, but they observe probably some of the portion of the traffic. Global adversary would be they can observe the whole internet. Technically, you can say that, okay, who can observe the whole internet, but there are adversaries who can observe a significant amount of the internet. For example, AT&T or German Telecom. They probably can have access to 60% of the global network. And there are studies that shows that those big networks like AT&T or German Telecom, they can indeed access, have access to 50% or 60% of the traffic of the network if they want. And then the question comes to our mind, then when you want to make a communication private, what does it mean? What properties do you expect from the network? Is anonymity enough, or do you need more? Or what exactly do you need? So ideally, suppose Alice wants to communicate to someone, Bob, and then what Alice would like to hide. Of course, what she is saying, that is the confidentiality of messages. Who she is communicating with, sometimes that is important. That is what we are considering when you're talking about anonymity. Most of the time, sometimes it's slightly more. When she is communicating, so if there is a communication pattern, how long she is communicating, from where she is communicating. Sometimes, most of the time, IP address comes with location. From the IP address, you can track location. And how much data she is sending. Are you downloading a file? Are you downloading a movie? Or are you just accessing the web? Is there any pattern of communication? So is it like every morning at 8 a.m. you access the service, and then again 9 a.m., then again 10 a.m.? Based on that pattern, you can probably decide, probably these are related to blockchain transactions, probably these are related to browsing, probably these are related to file downloading, and all these things. And whether she is communicating at all, probably this is too difficult to hide. That means even if you are not communicating, something is still going on. In anonymity, most of the time we deal with who. Sometimes we try to hide when or how long or where or the amount of data. But that part is, sometimes we try to protect, but sometimes it's difficult to protect. Patterns comes with those informations as well. And whether she is communicating at all, that is generally a much more difficult problem, which we call unobservability. I'll explain that. And typically, when we talk about anonymity, we try not to include that notion, but sometimes probably that is also important. Any questions here till now? By the way, you can ask questions if you didn't know. So if this part is clear, let me talk about what kind of anonymity notions can we consider. One really popular anonymity notion, I would not call it anonymity, because as an anonymity researcher, if I call this anonymity, that would be a blasphemy. So what we call pseudonymity. Pseudonymity means basically, so many of the actions, suppose you are making blockchain transactions, if all your transactions can be linked to one identity, then you can call it pseudonymity. For example, Skype is pseudonymous. Skype is not anonymous. When Bitcoin first came, people claimed that Bitcoin achieves anonymity. Then people showed, come on, guys, all the transactions that you make on Bitcoin, you can track them, and you can point that all these transactions are made from the same entity. And that means you can assign an identity to that. You can profile them. You can see the pattern, and you can basically, even if you don't know who that exact person is, but that person has a persona or identity, which is the address on the Bitcoin network, and you can point them together, point all of these actions together, and that's pseudonymity. And this is basically all your actions are connected together, connected to one identity. For example, an ideal example would be Skype. And most of the time, Bitcoin transactions should be something like this. So sometimes you can actually generate completely fresh address and start from there. So many of your actions can be connected together, but some of them can be disjoint. And then you can have kind of multiple persona. So basically partial identities. But still, based on those partial identities, you can profile them, you can learn patterns, you can learn information about the person. And then, as I mentioned, then if you can connect many actions together, then that means you can link them together, and that means you can build a persona, you can profile them, and that basically the main idea behind anonymity is that you protect meta information about you. You protect information about your behavior. You protect information about who you are talking to, but probably that's not true anymore. And then not slightly stronger, this is something that I would like to achieve for all anonymous communication systems, which we call unlinkability. That means, if I go back to the first slide, previous slide, that means every action is independent, and they are not, cannot be the one on the left, this one. So every action has only one source point, or no two actions can be linked together. That's why we are calling it unlinkability. And that means it's concealing link between many actions, and basically you cannot profile them, you cannot piece identity together, so you cannot piece information together. The observation is this transaction happened. You don't know who made the transaction, you don't know who received the money, you see this transaction happened. And then you see another transaction, you cannot see that, okay, they are somehow related. And the more linkability you have among actions, it degrades anonymity. Intuitively, I think that's we understand. That's something we understand. And then unobservability is a much stronger notion, where it's not just anonymity. So even if you hide those information, hide those links, still it's you can see at this point, at this time, at 7 p.m. 30 minutes, this transaction happened. You can see that this transaction, after the transaction has happened, you can see that probably the transaction has some amount. Or you can see that there are multiple transactions, or 10 transactions happens at the same time. That means it still reveals information. Probably, if all the transactions are happening at the same time, suddenly, probably they are all from the same person. So the volume information, or the exact time, or the type, if you want to hide all these things, then we are calling it unobservability. So basically, most of the times, unobservability links translates to that people cannot observe how you use the system at all. And that's generally difficult to achieve. I don't know any practical systems that achieves unobservability really well. And intuitively, you can see that that means even if you are not, it's easy to see that if you are using the internet or not. You have to log into the internet, you have to connect to the internet. That's easy to observe. And hiding even that information is really difficult. But still, if you can observe those informations, you can make informations based on that. So for example, many people consider that hidden services like Silk Road are tracked down not just based on breaking anonymity, but also based on things like which location in this general area has the electricity uses which is equivalent to running this service, or what kind of electricity uses are there, or what kind of uses are there. So this kind of, if you observe this kind of information for long term, you can actually infer many information, and that's why many times it's important, but in real life it's difficult to achieve. And solution, I mentioned, as I mentioned, that probably then you have to keep using the internet always. And always you have to make it seem like you are always downloading and uploading large files. And then probably you can achieve unobservability. Otherwise, it's really easy to see that you are connected to the internet. This is the amount of data you are downloading from your ISP. That's very easy to see. But then basically, are you going to use the system that way? And is it possible if to actually, is it sustainable if all the users of internet in the world, they start using the internet that way, as if they're always uploading and downloading large files? I don't think that's sustainable. And that's why I mentioned that unobservability is a really difficult notion to achieve. So I only explained 3 notions, but there are many other ways to define anonymity. For example, you can define anonymity on the sender side, you can define anonymity on the receiver side, you can define anonymity notions which are impartial. I'm not expecting you to actually go through all these terms and notions. It's just to show that sometimes they're interrelated, sometimes they're not, and there are many ways, and still there is a debate among researchers which anonymity notions to use at what for which context. And it's not always easy to choose. And so the notions that I showed, those are just intuitive, and those are just a chosen few, just to give you an intuition what anonymity means. So if we have all understood what anonymity means, now let me go to Tor, how Tor works and how Tor helps you achieve anonymity. Are there any questions right now in terms of anonymity notions, or any comments or concerns? Okay, if you don't have questions, then I have questions. And you know that drill, right? Enrique, what do you understand by anonymity? Or what would you want to, suppose you are given, somehow someone is designing a system, anonymous communication system, what properties would you expect from that system? Okay. Anyone else? What about you, Giorgio? What do you mean by metadata? Okay, that's anonymity property, but what do you mean by metadata? Yes. So, okay, then I am convinced that people have somewhat understood what anonymity means. Now let's move on. So how Tor works, suppose Alice wants to access some news website. What Alice should do, Tor has many Tor servers, which are basically volunteered. So people volunteered as servers. For example, they could be universities, they could be private volunteers. And we are calling them Tor nodes or onion nodes or onion routers. So what Alice should do? Alice should choose 3 onion routers or more. 3 is the default setting. Alice should choose 3 onion routers on the path instead of sending the packet directly to the news website. We call them a gateway, middle node, and an exit node. And then Alice should basically have keys established with gateway, middle node, and exit node. I'll explain in a bit how Alice establishes the key. And then Alice basically sends an encrypted packet to gateway. And that encrypted channel, through that encrypted channel, Alice could send another encrypted packet to middle node. and then exit node, and then, so this is basically layered encryption. So the gateway only sees that, okay, this is an encrypted channel, and whatever I can decrypt, so the first layer, the gateway can decrypt. Whatever the gateway can decrypt, the gateway only sees the information that the gateway should forward that information to the middle node, M. And M also does the same. There is an encrypted channel between Alice and the middle node through the gateway, through this the external channel. And then the middle node receives encrypted packet. When the middle node decrypts their layer, the middle node sees that information that this packet, I should forward it to the exit node. So similarly, exit node sees the packet and sees that, okay, after decrypting, I see that this packet, I should forward it to the news website. So an easy implementation of this should be using public key encryption. For example, you encrypt the packet first for the exit node, and then you add another layer of encryption for middle node, then you add another layer of encryption for the gateway, and then you send the whole encrypted packet to the gateway. Gateway decrypts one layer, then sees another encrypted packet, and then also you have to embed the information that you forward this encrypted packet to the middle node, and so on. Using public key encryption, you can do that. But Tor does it slightly differently. Public encryption takes much longer. So Tor has an explicit key agreement phase, where Alice can set up a symmetric key with middle node and exit node without even revealing her information to middle node and exit node. Let's see how. So Alice wants to connect to these three onion routers: onion router 1, onion router 2, onion router 3. So first, Alice should do a Diffie element key agreement with onion router 1. That is simple. That's easy to see. Now, once Alice has done the onion Diffie element key agreement, that means Alice has an authenticated and encrypted channel between with onion router 1. And with that channel, Alice can transmit any information, any packet. And when Alice wants to extend the, we call it circuit, extend the circuit to onion router 2, what would Alice do? Using this authenticated and encrypted channel with onion router 1, Alice will send a packet which says extend. The information that onion router 2 sees is extend, but the rest of the packet is basically a packet for Diffie element key agreement with onion router 2. And since these onion routers are publicly known, so Alice knows the public key information for onion router 2. It's difficult for onion router 1 to become a man in the middle. Only thing the onion router 1 can do is drop the packet. They cannot pretend that they are onion router 2 or they are someone else. So either they forward the packet or drop the packet. If they forward the packet, that means Alice can do another Diffie element key agreement with onion router 2 using the existing channel of her with onion router 1. Is there any question here? Or okay, if there is no question here, then how does Alice extend it to onion router 3? Now, using the encrypted and authenticated channel with onion router 1, Alice can extend the channel to onion router 2. That means Alice has a continuous channel also with onion router 2. Then Alice can do the same thing. Whatever Alice forwards through the second channel, onion router 2 receives it and then sees that it has some packet. The packet could say extend, and then what to extend. And that what to extend is what part is basically Diffie element key agreement with onion router 3. And that means finally Alice has a channel between with onion router 1, onion router 2, onion router 3. And as long as each of these servers maintain these session IDs, you can have the persistent channel. And that means through this channel, Alice can forward any message to Bob. And since this is similar to Diffie element, this is Diffie element key agreement, it's a bidirectional channel. That means Alice can use the channel to send messages to Bob, and Bob can actually respond to onion router 3. And as onion router 3 knows that the response is corresponding to this, the message that onion router 3 sent to Bob, and then basically they can also send back. So it's a bidirectional channel. Questions here? Okay. So now we have a bidirectional channel between Alice and the exit node through guard node and middle node. As long as the guard node can only see Alice and middle node, the middle node can only see guard node and exit node, the exit node can only see middle node and the news website. So unless you control everything or you can observe everything, it seems difficult to actually track, right? So if Alice sends a packet, guard node cannot see where it is going, middle node cannot see where it came from, exit node doesn't see where it came from. So did we achieve anonymity? Yes. Exit node only sees that they had a circuit extension request from middle node, from some user. But since Alice is doing if we go back here, since Alice is doing this extending the circuit or route through the existing circuit, so onion router 3 doesn't know, onion router 3 only sees onion router 2. And onion router knows that onion router 2 is forwarding this Diffie-Hellman key agreement request based on some user's request. But who that user is, that onion router 2 doesn't know. Alice is not sharing her public keys in the channel. Here it's based on the public key of the onion router 3 completely. Any other questions? Yes. Who are we? Yes, that's possible. So for example, what if the adversary is observing both gateway and exit node? And then basically the adversary can observe the time. I'll come back to that in a bit. You're right there. Yes, yes. In Tor network, generally, when you register for as a guard node or exit node, you need special requirements. You can still act as middle node, but not all nodes can act as guard node or exit node. It's not as simple as that, because it's not as strict. For example, to become a middle node, you don't have much requirements, but to become a guard node and exit node, there are also additional requirements. For example, you need to probably have some lawyers with you always if you're adding as an exit node. Or to become a guard node, you need to have some kind of bandwidth requirement. And that means if you can act as a guard node, you can technically act as a middle node as well, but probably you don't want to, but you can. So it's not strictly stratified. I would call it stratified if you have strict such layers, but it's logically yes. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? So that means we have a bidirectional communication, and possibly if the guard node and exit node are not compromised, or one cannot exactly monitor traffic when it is sent and when it is, probably we achieve anonymity. And I will talk about such traffic correlation in a minute. And suppose I talked about suppose you are not an end user, you are a service. So for example, you might be familiar with WikiLeaks, or you might be familiar with file sharing services like Mediafire or Mega Upload, and the consequences of having such file sharing services. Suppose you want to have some services like that, and then how do you set up that in Tor? So there are famous services like New Yorker Strongbox. Facebook has an onion service, by the way. You can connect to Facebook using Tor, and they actually maintain an onion service. Not because they want to achieve anonymity, just because if you want to achieve anonymity, they want to support that easily. And there are many sites that are taken down by the governments. For example, Silk Road is a famous of them. They are famous for, I don't know, they used to have drug cartels, contract killing, everything that you can think of other than, I think, CSAM. And then they also created Silk Road 2, and that exactly was not taken down, because the people who are running Silk Road 2 were not did not get caught, but the service is not there anymore. So let's see how we can set up such services. So suppose you have a service. You want to call those services onion services .onion. So what you do is you first connect to an introduction point. What is introduction point? So similar to exit node, this introduction point is like an exit node. You connect to that point. You are creating a Tor circuit. But you are not, after creating the circuit, you are not sending packets to anyone. You just, there is a directory called hidden service directory. You are just registering that, okay, this is my introduction point, and you put that in the hidden service directory. And you can do that through Tor, so that hidden service directory doesn't know that who you are actually. So you have the introduction point, and your entry is there in the hidden service directory. Now a client wants to connect to you. So the client would first query the hidden service directory, and then the client will not connect to the introduction point. The client will create a rendezvous point, which is again another Tor circuit, a different Tor circuit. And the final point in the rendezvous point is an exit node. But again, this is not forwarding any packets yet. What the client will do, after creating the rendezvous point, the client will send the address of the rendezvous point to that introduction point. And now what the service can do, if the service likes the client or does not like the client or whatever, based on their mood, they can then connect to the rendezvous point. And then you have a bidirectional channel. Tor channels are bidirectional, you have a bidirectional channel. Now the client can access xyz.onion, and they can send messages to each other. And that way, the client does not know the IP address of the hidden service, and the hidden service doesn't know the IP address of the client. Do you see any problem here? What would be the problem in this design? Yes. Can you speak louder, please? Sorry. Yes. So if you want to connect to a hidden service, and then you every time you connect to a hidden service and you query the hidden service directory, that means people know that you are probably trying to connect to that hidden service. So it's not perfectly anonymous. And then any other problems that you see? For example, with this. Yes. Yes, the directory can be malicious. You have to trust the hidden service directory. Right now, Tor has, I think, 8 such servers, and they claim basically, as long as multiple of them are honest, so not all of them are compromised, you have a consistent version of the directory, but all of them are probably managed by the Tor developers. And that means basically it becomes a single point of failure. And also, suppose you created an introduction point as a service, and you put it in the hidden service directory. You became popular, and then many people can put the same service name and put it in the hidden service directory. There is no way to verify. How do you certify such services? Because those are anonymous. So there are many open problems related to hidden services, and that are not yet solved. But right now, this is what we have. And of course, since this circuit length is longer, the circuits are distinguishable. That just by looking at the circuit, you can say that you are talking to hidden services. And right now, the number of hidden services in Tor is several thousands. But here I want to put a note that many people synonymize hidden services or onion services as dark web. But it's like there are onion services, there are unindexed websites which people don't usually, that are not searchable. You have to actually know the IP address to access those websites. And then there are online criminal activities. People generally try to synonymize all of them together. People think they are basically, most of them are the same, and they have like a significant overlap. But the reality is that not all onion services are basically criminal services. For example, Facebook has onion service. I don't think you would consider Facebook as a criminal organization. Maybe many people don't like Facebook, that's a different issue, but there is a significant not overlap among these things. And also, the question is, there are like, which one would you call dark web? Is it the hidden services that are inside, behind Tor? Or is it the online criminal activity? Or is it the unindexed websites? Or is it an intersection of them? What exactly is dark web? So it's probably not ideal to actually synonymize them. Just because some service is behind Tor doesn't mean they are bad, or they are part of some weird activities. For example, many cases, Bitcoin miners try to hide behind hidden services to avoid denial of service attacks, so that people cannot DOS them. And also scale matters. There are only few thousand services that are behind Tor, and probably the number of unindexed websites and number of websites that allow such criminal activities is probably much larger. Now I am back to talking about tracing in Tor. Suppose you can just observe the input stream and output stream from Tor, from the sender and the receiver. You don't even need to compromise the guard node and exit node. You just can see the input stream and output stream. If you ignore the network jitters, then what you can do is you can compare these templates. And then if the template match, you can easily say that, okay, with high probability, these users are talking to each other. And that means you can de-anonymize Tor just by looking at the traffic pattern. And if you can compromise entry and exit node, that's even better. And if you, the question is then, suppose 10% or 20% nodes in Tor are compromised, then how much fraction of traffic can you observe? And suppose you don't want to do targeted attack, but you are happy as long as you can compromise, you can break the anonymity for 5% or 10% of Tor users. You can still profile them, you can still get information out of them. And then basically, if you can compromise certain percentage of entry and exit node, or even if you're a big ISP, you can still significantly de-anonymize Tor. And I think there are papers which says in simulated, if you can actually collect all Tor traffic, then what percentage of traffic actually you can de-anonymize, what percentage of traffic you cannot de-anonymize. Of course, in the internet, it's difficult to collect all traffic, it's difficult to analyze them, it's difficult to find patterns. Those are difficult mathematical problems. But you have the tools, you have the weapons with you, if you can do that. And many times, the entry or the guard node and exit node are chosen by the clients based on available bandwidth. And if you can pretend that you have more bandwidth than you actually have, you can actually attract more clients towards you. And that means you can de-anonymize more users. And there are actual attacks based on that. And sometimes even, de-anonymizing one connection is enough. Suppose you are talking to Bob for a long time and you switch circuits multiple times. As long as you can de-anonymize one of them, you can say, okay, all these communications are somehow related. So all of them are between these two. And then the question is, if you can predict things based on this kind of traffic correlation, based on the timing correlation, that this is when the traffic was generated and this is when the traffic left the system, how do you avoid such attacks? What can you do? You introduce delays. And that's where MixNet comes. So still you are rerouting traffic through multiple hops. However, node 1 will wait for certain amount of time or certain number of packets so that node 1 can collect many packets and then forward them. together. And same is done by node 2, same is done by node 3. That means you're explicitly breaking this pattern, explicitly breaking this timing correlation. And even if the two nodes are dishonest or compromised, still they cannot actually, as long as at least one of them is honest, they cannot figure out this pattern. They cannot have traffic correlation. And since you're explicitly adding this delay, you are basically introducing latency overhead. And there are many variants of mixed nets. For example, time mixed. So what time mixed do? You have a certain amount of time. Each node will wait for a certain amount of time. And then how many packets they collect, they will forward. And then that means you have bounded end-to-end latency, but you don't know how many packets you will collect always. Sometimes it might happen that you have 1 second round time. We can call it rounds, this time. In 1 second, you have collected only one packet. That means you practically have no anonymity. It's a single packet. And then you can use optional flushing conditions. For example, you have to collect at least 100 packets to flush, to forward. That makes it better. And then there are continuous time mixed nets. Here the hope is that instead of having explicit such time intervals, you delay each packet individually, independent of all other packets. And typically these delays are chosen by the client and drawn from an exponential distribution. And what that does is, since you are adding a delay on each hop, the hope is during that interval, some more packets will arrive, and then you will achieve some mixing. And since you are adding a predictable delay, which is from a probability distribution, you can also make the end-to-end latency predictable. So that means your end-to-end latency is predictable, and you have mixing with some guarantees. And when that is possible, because of exponential distribution, you can say that this mixing is memoryless. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. So suppose you have a packet that arrives at T1, another packet arrives at T2, and then one of them goes out at T3. As long as T3 is bigger than T2, T3 is after both T1 and T2 has arrived, you cannot distinguish which one of them was getting out at T3. That's what the memoryless property means. However, it's possible that one of them, the packet that comes at T1, they goes out even before the packet at T2 comes. That's possible. There is a probability of that happening. But if they are meeting each other, then it's the next packet that goes out, it's indistinguishable. And that's the guarantee that we are relying on for continuous time mixed nets. And there are many, and there are many network topologies. For example, there is free route, which is at every hop. I said that mixed net is multiple hops, Tor is multiple hops. At every hop, you can choose any node from all possible nodes. In stratified, as Shayan mentioned, that there are exact layers. That in this layer, these are the nodes. In this layer, these are the nodes. In this layer, these are the nodes. And you have to choose from those subsets. Stratified restricted is something like, in this layer, these are the nodes, but if you have picked this node on the first layer, you can only pick these nodes in the second layer. And then there is direct explicit cascade, where there are no mixing between each other. You can see these are straight lines. This is generally something that people don't use anymore. And also, you can sometimes, the delay is not enough. Suppose there are few users and the delay requirement is really small. Suppose you want to support browsing. The delay is not enough. Then you can add dummy traffic, which is indistinguishable from real traffic, and to actually improve anonymity. I'm not going to get into how dummy traffic actually quantitatively help, but it's still an open, many cases it's an open problem how to exactly utilize dummy traffic, exactly what quantifiable guarantees you can get from dummy traffic. But typically dummy traffic is also important for unobservability, which I mentioned a few minutes back, that people don't want others to know that if you are using the system or not. If you want to achieve that, then you have to have dummy traffic. And of course, if you are adding dummy traffic, that means you are sending more information, you are sending more packets, it's adding bandwidth overhead. and possibility to increase anonymity. However, it's difficult to model or measure the effect of dummy traffic. For example, should the dummy traffic be always created by users, or the servers can help, or what kind of dummy traffic is better? Those are still open problems. I have 8 more minutes, so I'll go quickly. The last topic, that is Dining Cryptographers Network. So suppose this is completely different from Mixnet and Tor in terms of topology. Suppose Jim, Pam, Ryan, and Andy, they are part of a local area network, and they want to access the internet using the relay or gateway of the LAN, or some local services within the LAN. Then the question is, can they achieve anonymity for them? And what if the relay or gateway is compromised? And probably they don't want to trust each other. And that's why they don't want explicit communication among them. They will only talk to the relay or gateway and try to run the protocol, and still want to achieve anonymity and low latency, in the sense that you want to support multiple applications, for example, video call, audio call, conferencing, browsing. Probably even Tor is not capable for supporting audio calls or video calls. Then how do you do that? One potential solution could be using Tor or Mixnet. But the thing is, that means you are actually rerouting the traffic throughout. In Tor or Mixnet, the routers are distributed across the globe, and that means you are rerouting the traffic throughout the globe. And that means you are exposing the system to external attacks. Where if you have to only access local services, you don't need to do that. And that means we don't want something that we can deploy within the local area network. And that's why we want to use DC nets. I am going to explain what DC nets are, but you have to bear with me for a few minutes. So I'm not going to explain DC nets that were proposed in 1980s, but going to explain the latest version that I know of. So we have Jim, Pam, Ryan, and Andy. And we have some setup servers that are external to the systems. Now I mentioned that we don't want to use external servers, but the thing is, these setup servers only help in the setup and doesn't take part in the actual protocol. And at least one of them should be honest. Even these are logical servers. Even the clients can actually act as those servers. But the thing is, suppose you want to scale the system for several thousand users. Probably you don't want to have several thousand servers. You want to have probably 3 or 4 servers with any trust model. And that's why the setup servers could be useful to improve performance, not for security. And how do these setup servers help? The main thing that it helps with key agreement. What the setup servers can do is the setup servers can split a secret S among the users. So each setup server is splitting the secret S. And S is basically a public parameter, although I'm calling it secret because it's using the same principle as secret sharing, but it's a public parameter. And so does the other setup servers. And the client is receiving as many shares as the number of setup servers. And that basically the client is adding all of them to derive its local key, local private key. And the relay knows the sum of all those private keys, but not the individual keys. And now they can run a DC net. Let's see how. I said there are setup servers, the relay knows this, and we don't need the setup servers anymore. The client, suppose Jim wants to send a message in this round. What Jim will do, Jim will send X is his message, and its private key, add its private key, and rest of them will just send the keys. And then the relay can add all of them and subtract the keys, and then figure out the message X. Because K times S is all the sum of keys. But that means after one round, you have to rerun the setup protocol again. But we don't want to involve the setup servers again and again, right? That means the setup servers can actually help to run the protocol. So we want to avoid doing that thing. So how to extend this protocol for multiple rounds? And how do the clients agree that Jim has to be the one to send message in this round and not anyone else? Because if two users send messages on the same round, then there is a collision and you cannot recover the message. So for multiple rounds, again, we have setup servers, relay knows this, and we can use something like additive key homomorphic PRFs. That means you have the keys, and for a tag D, you can sum them. This is the thing. And then, still we haven't solved the slot agreement problem. Still we are assuming that Jim is the one sending the message. But you can use this for multiple rounds, for many D values. And every round you can have changed the D, and D can be public. That's fine. And then the relay can still extract the message. And still we have to solve the slot agreement problem. How do the clients know when to send the messages? And we can solve the problem, but by actually not solving the problem. So what we can use is something like Newton's power sum. So it's an equation system. So it's basically, as the name suggests, it's powered sum. And then what the users need to do, every round has to have n slots for n users. So for every client, each client I will compute n values. So basically they will raise their message to different powers, power 0, power 1, power 2, power 3, power n. And they will add the corresponding additive homomorphic PRF. And instead of the tag, they will use the slot number. And then send it to the gateway. So does everyone else. Then we don't need to solve the slot agreement problem. Everyone is sending messages in every round. And the relay, for one slot, they have received messages from n different users. They will just add, the relay will just add them. And then the relay can actually retrieve the equation for that slot. And for n slots, the relay can get n equations. And that will basically give the equation system. And then the relay can solve this equation system and can retrieve all the messages. But that means we solve both the key agreement and slot agreement. But that means in every round, every user has to send a message for one message one user wants to send. And that is expensive in bandwidth overhead. And for many years, the anonymous communication researchers wondered, is it possible to achieve strong anonymity guarantees without introducing large latency and bandwidth overhead? And it seems the answer is no, based on some work. I will not go through the takeaways in detail. You can read them, and I will ask if you have any questions. So there are two things that Signal did recently. One is rolling out the pseudonyms. Another is actually making, when you send packet messages through Signal, Signal can see that this is the sender, this is the receiver, and this is the encrypted packet. Now there is something that Signal has rolled out as a trial version. I think I don't remember the slide number. But so what they rolled out is the packet will not contain the sender anymore. Because to deliver the message, the packet does not need the sender, right? I think the time is over. But the packet does not need the sender. So basically, the packet will not have the sender information, only the receiver information, and that's it. So that's the thing that is towards anonymity, but the Signal server still can see that you are the one who sent the message. So we cannot achieve anonymity in terms of against Signal server, but what the Signal can do is deny having information of that. That if someone, the government asks, who sent this message, Signal say, I did not log it. This is not required by the protocol. That's the thing Signal achieved.
Before we move on to the next one, I have just one very quick question. Could you, those services like Facebook that has user accounts, how does having Onion service would provide privacy? If I want to log into my account, wouldn't they still be able to observe?
The idea is you still trust Facebook. Facebook will still authenticate you. Facebook knows who you are as a person, but they want to show that they were conscious about your privacy, in the sense that if your ISP wants to track if you are accessing Facebook or not, if someone else, a third party wants to track if you are using Facebook or not, or your behavior, they cannot track it. That's the thing.
Not from Facebook.
Not from Facebook.
Okay.
Any other quick questions? Yes.
What would you recommend as a single, all-encompassing textbook that summarizes all of this theory in a well, with a scientific approach, but nevertheless for a layman audience?
For anonymity or for privacy or?
Both.
I don't think there is a book related to that covers the privacy, anonymity part of privacy, communication anonymity part of privacy. There are few recent books on data anonymization that are most on the side of you have a database with all the data set and how do you anonymize data. Based on that side there are books, but not on this side. At least I don't know any.
Okay, thank you.
Privacy is hard and 7 other myths is actually good. It's not the technical details, but yeah, it has like 2 examples.
Yeah, it's a good basis. Yeah, yeah.